Hi, my name is Jeff Ashton from ashtutors.co.uk, and today I want to talk to you about how you can improve presentation. And by presentation in particular, we're talking about handwriting. And what I'd like to do is challenge you. This is a challenge. It's a 14-day challenge in order for you to improve the presentation of the subject. So the subject might be a child, and in many cases we're talking about a child of primary school age. But it may also be a teenager, it might even be an adult, because the same principles apply. The same 9 tips I'm going to talk to you about apply to any age group whatsoever. Just try it, try and be as consistent as possible, and you'll find that I'm absolutely certain you'll make some improvements. And certainly when they're writing in exams, the examiner is going to be seeing their written work, and instantly an examiner is going to form an opinion of a child's ability level simply by looking at the presentation of that word that they deliver to them. As you can see here, I've got a very nice infographic or poster for you outlining the 9 handwriting best practices. And what I'll do is I'll make this available for free at the end of the videos, and you'll be able to download it for nothing in exchange for an email address. No such thing as a free lunch, unfortunately, but if it's the content that you receive from that is not something that you're interested in, you can always unsubscribe. Okay, for tip number 1 is simply sharp pencil. Now, from observing kids who have other issues with handwriting, very often, and whether they feel that they're a lost cause, I'm not sure, but very often they're happy to put up with the wrong kind of tool. In other words, they will let a pencil get as blunt as possible so that it creates a big fat smudge on the page, and they'll happily write away with that. The same thing can be said about the handwriting pens, these red handwriting pens that many primary schools use. They're extremely cheap for obvious reasons, and sometimes within days they can blunt, and what happens is the child is then forced into, rather than having a nice sloping angle for a pen, they start to lift it up and away so that it's upright, because that's the only way they can actually make a mark with it. So this is something that needs to be dealt with, and the child needs to be aware of this, that they either sharpen a pencil if they're using a pencil, but if they're using a pen, especially one of these fibre tip pens that need raising up to an upright angle, that if that happens then they need to get a new one, because the angle of the pencil or the angle of the pen can make quite a difference to what they produce on the page. So that's tip number 1. Still on the theme of tools to use, it's important that you make sure that your child hasn't got a pencil that's really small in length. You have to make sure that that pencil does actually reach across to this bit of the hand, so that when they're holding it, it's resting nicely on the hand there. So we don't want something that's too small that doesn't actually reach. A child will completely ignore that and will try and make a mark with whatever they've got, and you need to make sure that they've got the right tool for the job. Okay, for tip 2. Tip 2 is all about sitting position. I've witnessed on many an occasion children sitting at all sorts of strange angles in order to write in a book or on a piece of paper. You need to actually say to them and make sure that before they start to write, that they're sitting upright in a chair with their back against the back of the chair, their bottom right at the back of the chair, and that the desk is at the right height in front of them, and that they're at a slight incline sitting forward. So I've just sat upright in my chair, and I'm sitting with my piece of work right in front of me. I'm not at an angle, I've not got a big gap in front, I'm not leaning over to one side. Kids will do all this, and as a cumulative thing with all the other things I'm going to mention, it really does make a difference. So if you can get them at the right position, so that whatever they're writing on, if they're right-handed, it's slightly to the left. If they're left-handed, it's slightly to the right. Some kids even find that a slight wedge in front of them is something that improves their writing, and you can actually buy those like a writing board that goes in front of them that will improve their writing. I've never found that to make much difference to me, but everybody's a little bit different. But the first thing to do is to make sure that they are sitting at the right position in order to do their writing, and that's something that I think Lots of people overlook, especially if you're in a busy classroom. You don't really pay much attention to these little details, but if you're sitting one-to-one with somebody, you can really see the difference if you get them to sit at the right position. So that's tip number 2. For tip number 3, it's all about finger grip. Now this can be increasingly difficult to improve as a child gets older, if not impossible. The best time to do this is when the child is really young, and it's something again you've got to consistently improve upon and consistently check. You can get things, little rubber widgets, which will help and improve the finger grip if it looks like they're beginning to do it incorrectly. Now what happens is, if a child doesn't hold the pencil or the pen correctly, they start to compensate for that by moving their wrist and their arm. So for example, the correct finger grip is that one on there, that one at the side, and the thumb holding it so that you've got movement in your fingers. Now what you tend to find is that children will do that, children will do that, children will do all sorts of strange positions, and what you find is that to compensate for the lack of movement that those 3 or the thumb and 2 finger grip gives you, they will move their arm around, they will twist the wrist around, and especially if they're left-handed, what they'll tend to do then is cover up what their writing is, so that then they'll move the body on a strange angle in order to compensate for it. Now as I say, it's more and more difficult to correct this the older they get, so you really need to get in young in order to do this. So if you just search on the internet for pencil grips, then you'll find these really cheap. I mean, we're talking pence. Pencil grips, you can get them in packets of 3, packets of 10 in case they get lost, and they just simply fit on the edge of a pencil or on the edge of a pen, and it promotes this three-pronged grip on a pencil or a pen, and it helps them to get those fingers in the right place so that they're more able to write properly and make use of the fact that those three-fingered hold, tripod hold, will give them more control than that kind of grip will. So there we have it, there's your 3 tips for today. I'm sorry the video went on a little longer than I expected. I'll try and keep the next 6 tips as short as possible. I'll try and keep the videos to 2 or 3 minutes if I can. I do tend to ramble quite a bit. So if you want to get hold of this infographic, the best thing to do is to go to this address, and you'll be able to download that for nothing. As I say, you only need to give over your email address, and you'll be able to download your own copy, print it off, and get it up on the wall there somewhere that will remind you and remind your child. And it's really important to make sure you consistently apply this. So whenever your child's doing some work for school or something for any kind of situation where they need to do the best handwriting, the best presentation, then you need to work your way through these tips and consistently apply them, and you will really find that it'll make a big difference. And I'll see you on the next video.